The night the city lights reflected like shattered stars on the restaurant's glass walls was the same night Ethan Cole felt his life pause mid-breath, as if fate itself had reached out and tightened its grip around his chest. He had only come for a quiet dinner after a double shift, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion and years of unspoken loss, unaware that a single moment inside that glowing room would divide his life into before and after. Before the story unfolds any further, take a second with me right here. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that happen when strangers cross paths, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. And tell us in the comments where you are watching from, because stories like this connect hearts across the world. Ethan was a single father who had learned to survive on routines and restraint. His days began before sunrise and ended long after the city slept, balancing construction work, night shifts at a small warehouse, and the sacred responsibility of raising his young daughter, Lily. Since the accident that took his wife 3 years earlier, life had become a series of practical decisions. There was no room for dreams, no space for indulgence. Dinner out was a rare event, save for nights when Lily stayed with her aunt and Ethan allowed himself to feel human again. That evening, he had chosen the restaurant not for its elegance, but because it was quiet, warm, and close enough that he could walk home. Across the room, Isabella Moreau entered with her son, Noah, and the air itself seemed to shift. Isabella was known in business magazines and whispered conversations as a billionaire whose calm intelligence had reshaped industries. Yet that night, she was simply a mother holding her son's hand, guiding him gently through the crowd. The staff moved with reverence, but her focus never left Noah. She had built empires, but raising her son alone after a painful divorce had taught her lessons no boardroom ever could. Success had given her comfort, but motherhood had given her purpose. Ethan noticed them without knowing who she was. What caught his attention was not wealth or status, but the way Isabella leaned slightly toward Noah, listening with complete attention as he spoke. It reminded Ethan of how he used to listen to Lily when she talked about her drawings and dreams. The sight stirred something tender and raw inside him, a reminder of what he had lost and what he was still fighting to protect. As dinner unfolded, the restaurant hummed softly with clinking glasses and muted laughter. Ethan ate slowly, his thoughts drifting toward bills, school fees, and the quiet loneliness waiting for him at home. He did not notice Isabella watching him at first. She had seen the worn edges of his jacket, the tired grace in his posture, and the way his eyes softened when he smiled at the waiter. She recognized the look of someone who carried responsibility like a second spine. When Noah excused himself to use the restroom, Isabella's gaze followed him briefly before returning to Ethan. Something about his solitude drew her in. She had learned long ago that wealth created walls, and genuine humanity often existed beyond them. As a woman who had lost trust in easy smiles and polished intentions, she had developed an instinct for sincerity. Ethan radiated it without trying. The moment that froze Ethan came not from a dramatic announcement or a grand gesture, but from a quiet, deliberate choice. Isabella stood from her table and walked toward him, her presence calm, yet commanding. The distance between them felt longer than it was, stretching with every step. Ethan looked up, confusion flickering across his face, his instincts urging him to retreat into himself. Isabella did not speak in a way that demanded attention. Instead, she acknowledged his presence with respect, asking if she could join him for a moment. Ethan nodded, unsure why his hands suddenly felt cold. In his world, people like her did not notice people like him. The imbalance of their lives felt vast, and yet, sitting across from each other, they were simply two parents shaped by loss. What Isabella did next left Ethan completely frozen. She did not ask about his work or offer charity masked as kindness. She listened. She listened as he spoke about Lily, about learning to braid hair from online videos, about packing lunches with handwritten notes because words were all he had to give some days. She listened as if his story mattered, as if his struggles were not invisible. And in that listening, something inside Ethan cracked open. Isabella saw the way his voice tightened when he mentioned his wife, the way grief still lived in the pauses between his sentences. She understood that kind of pain. Though her life was filled with luxury, it was also marked by betrayal and loneliness. She knew what it meant to rebuild from emotional rubble while the world assumed you were untouched. When Noah returned, Isabella introduced Ethan not as a stranger, but as someone worth knowing. Noah smiled easily, sensing no tension, only warmth. For the first time in years, Ethan felt seen not as a burdened man scraping by, but as a father doing his best. The dinner ended without promises or exchanges of numbers that felt transactional. Isabella paid quietly and stood to leave, but before she did, she placed something on the table that changed everything. It was not money, nor was it a business card flaunting power. It was an invitation to a foundation event focused on education for single parents and their children, along with a handwritten note acknowledging his strength and resilience. Ethan stared at the card long after she left, his heart pounding. He felt frozen because kindness without conditions was something he had forgotten how to accept. His life had taught him that help always came with expectations or pity. This was different. This was respect that in the weeks that followed, Ethan wrestled with doubt. Attending the event meant stepping into a world he did not belong to, a world of tailored suits and polished smiles. But Lily's excitement when he told her about the possibility of scholarships and mentorship programs pushed him forward. He went not for himself, but for her. The event was transformative. Ethan found resources he never knew existed, met other parents who shared his struggles, and slowly began to believe that his life did not have to remain small. Isabella did not hover or rescue. She simply ensured doors were open and allowed him to walk through on his own terms. Over time, Ethan's circumstances changed. He enrolled in night courses, secured a better job, and watched Lily thrive in an environment filled with encouragement. Isabella remained a steady presence, not as a savior, but as someone who understood the power of quiet support. Their connection deepened through shared values rather than grand declarations. Yet the most profound change was internal. Ethan learned to stand taller, to believe that his worth was not defined by his bank account or his grief. Isabella, too, found healing in witnessing resilience untainted by ambition. Through Ethan, she rediscovered humility and the beauty of ordinary courage. Years later, Ethan would look back on that dinner as the night everything shifted. Not because a billionaire intervened, but because one human chose to truly see another. The ripple effects touched Lily's future, Isabella's heart, and countless others who benefited from the foundation's expanded reach inspired by Ethan's story. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness can arrive quietly and change everything, please take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel so more stories like this can find their way into the world. And before this story ends, I want to ask you something. From the heart, please comment below and tell us what this story made you feel, or share a moment when a stranger's kindness changed your life. Because sometimes, the most powerful moments happen not when someone gives us everything, but when they remind us that we were never invisible to begin with.